Dear Lord, I am humbled today to be sharing your message. I ask that you guide my words and my thoughts so that they glorify you. Amen. I want to begin by telling you about my day at work on Thursday, but first I have to explain to you that at my office, when you come into the building, you come into the main office for our organization where there's a receptionist, and inside that office is my office. Now my door doesn't lock, the main door does. Everybody comes up to the main office to make copies or send a fax or talk to the receptionist. And I don't close my door often because I like it to be open, but that's kind of the setup, so you need to know that for this story. On Thursday, as I think about it, I know that God had a hand in what happened on Thursday because it fits so well into my topic for today. The day started off very slowly, which is unusual for me. I usually have so many things on my to-do list that I don't know where to start. But this week I seem to be caught up, which scares me a little bit of what's going to happen next week. But as I was taking it slow and thinking it would be an easy day, maybe I'd actually have time to eat my lunch at my desk reading my book instead of eating my lunch while I worked on the computer. Then I thought, well, I'm going to leave a little early and I'm going to run some errands before I have to go to my class at 2:30. Sounded like a really good plan to me. Well, that plan didn't work out. Early in the week, someone in our office resigned, and we have to fill the position, which is my job. And as it usually happens in our office because of just different personalities, the gossip was being spread about the person leaving, why she was leaving, who we would get to replace her. And the other thing that people do when they come into the main office is they whisper a lot. And I can tell when they don't want me to hear anything because they whisper. So I could hear little pockets of whispering outside my door, and then there were people huddling together, all different places in the building and talking, and I tried to ignore all this. But then one person who was involved in all this came to my door and said, "Can we talk?" And she walked in and she closed my door. That's not a good sign. It's a definite signal that something was going on, and this continued to happen throughout the day. I think 3 or 4 people came into my office at different times and said, "Can we close the door?" And with all those conversations going on, my dream of eating lunch slowly while reading never materialized. I don't even remember when I ate it. I think it was in the middle, beginning, in the midst of all these conversations. I ended up leaving just about 20 minutes before my class, which bothers me because I have to drive to the seminary and I like to have extra time. By the time I got to my class, I was tired. Not physically, just really emotionally and mentally. I was ready for a break at work. My wish would have been not to go to class. My wish would have been to go off someplace by myself, but going to class was a really good alternative because it gave me something else to think about and different people to talk to. As I think about my day, then I think about Jesus' day as it's depicted in the sermon, in the gospel lesson today. He had been healing people all day, surrounded by crowds of people much larger than I had been surrounded by, who wanted something from him. Much bigger crowds, certainly more people with more suffering and disease. And don't you imagine that Jesus was tired and needed a break, some alone time? So that is what he did. The scripture says in the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. This wasn't the first time Jesus took time for himself. In Matthew 4, there's a story about Jesus healing and preaching and teaching to large crowds throughout Galilee. And when he saw another large crowd coming toward him, he withdrew to a mountaintop with his disciples. This is when he preached the Sermon on the Mount to them. He also did this, withdrew before the feeding of the 5,000. So Jesus recognized his own need for rest, for quiet, for solitude. He knew how important it was to rest and become refreshed and renewed in order to continue his work. He also needed time alone with his disciples to teach them so that they would understand his work and be able to continue on after he was gone. Although I have to wonder if at times he needed a break from them also. Imagine these 12 men traveling together. They weren't staying in the Hilton or the Ritz. They weren't traveling in comfort. Can't you picture them bickering, complaining? And after all, they were 12 men. Excuse me for that. They were. And Jesus, as any person like a parent would do, had to have said at some point, "I need a break. Let me get away from these people." Jesus also needed time to be with his Father, to spend time in prayer and to spend time to listen for God's word. We remember that famous scene pictured in the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus is kneeling and praying. He knew what was coming. He knew his own suffering and death would be around the corner. I can't imagine his pain and anguish at that point, but he knew where to turn for comfort and guidance, for strength to continue his journey. So if Jesus recognized the need for rest and quiet, why don't we? Are we so important, so busy, so necessary to others that we can't take a break? Think about God. So much more important and so necessary for our lives. But even he rested on the seventh day. Why is the idea of rest so difficult for us? When I was younger, I remember my family resting on Sundays. We'd go to church, we'd go to Sunday school, we'd come home, have dinner, that was our main meal. And then we'd rest or we'd play outside. I was usually the one sitting in the bedroom reading. Maybe we watched some sports on TV. I wasn't that much into football at that time, although it would have been the Baltimore Colts, not the Ravens. But I didn't watch TV that much. And sometimes I actually took a nap. Imagine that, a nap. But this was normal and natural for us. If we had told someone else what we did on Sunday, they wouldn't have thought anything was wrong with that. That's what they were doing. Of course, back then we couldn't go shopping because the stores were closed, and we didn't have recreation leagues that scheduled games on Sundays. But now there are so many other things to do on Sundays, and we might be made to feel that if we aren't busy, then we must be lazy or not involved in enough activities. I can remember different times here on Sunday nights when events would be planned, whether it was a Bible study or some kind of social, and say, you know what, I don't want to go. I want to rest. Sunday is my day to rest. But now even I'm guilty of this mentality of always having to be busy. It's hard for me to do nothing. When I was caught up on my work the other day, I looked around for something else to do. I couldn't just sit, because it would be wrong to just rest. I wake up in the morning thinking, what needs to be done today? What can I accomplish? And if you ask anybody in my family, they will tell you that I love to sleep in on Saturdays. I remember looking forward to the time after Julie and Kevin were born when they would be old enough that I could say to them on a Sunday morning when they woke me up, go watch cartoons and let me sleep. It was wonderful because I got to sleep. The sleeping night started right after we got married. Carl and I lived in the basement apartment of a house, and our bedroom was in the middle of the apartment. There were no windows in our bedroom, very dark. First Saturday, he was working, and I woke up and I looked at the clock and it was noon, and I was shocked. Like, oh no, I slept till noon. How in the world could I do that? I had work to do. People would think I was lazy. And I got some of those comments, and I still do, because I still like to sleep in. But I kept sleeping late because I enjoyed the rest. I enjoyed not getting up to an alarm clock, and I still got my work done. I felt rested, refreshed, and ready to tackle what needed to be done. And everybody in the family knew you don't call Donna before noontime on Saturday morning. But now I've noticed that I don't sleep as late on Saturdays. I might wake up about 8, and sometimes I want to go back to sleep. And then I think of all the things I should be doing. And I make myself feel guilty for lying in bed. Part of this is because I have more to do now with work and school. Plus, I'm not as young as I used to be. And before, when I would get up late, I'd stay up real late and get my work done. But now I can't do that anymore, so I have to go to bed earlier. But I think the main reason I don't sleep as late is because I worry what others will say. And I'm bombarded by my own thoughts. Get up. Be productive. Don't be lazy. Do you remember the story of Mary and Martha in the Bible? They were real good friends with Jesus, and one day he was visiting at their house, and what was Mary doing? She was sitting there at his feet, and she was listening intently to Jesus. And her sister Martha was in the kitchen, bustling around, making sure the meal was all ready. We all do that. Make sure everything's prepared in the kitchen, and then she would be looking, and I'm imagining she's giving Mary dirty looks. Like, why aren't you getting up to help me? Why am I doing all this work? So Martha said something to Jesus. And what did Jesus say? Beginning in Luke 10:29, it says, she had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Jesus was only going to be with them for a short time. Mary was taking the time to listen and to enjoy his presence, which is what we should do. Take the time to enjoy the people around us, take the time to rest, and to renew ourselves. This is what Jesus did when he withdrew from the crowds. It's what God did on the seventh day. Are we more important than them, that we can't take the time to rest? This made me wonder about Simon's mother-in-law, the woman Jesus healed in the scripture reading that I just did. If you think about that, here's a woman who was in bed with a fever. Jesus healed her, and what did she do? Did she rest? No. She got up and fixed the meal. And I thought, what? She'd been sick. Shouldn't somebody else be serving this meal? Somebody should be serving her. But then I looked at it a different way. Maybe this was her way of giving thanks to Jesus for making her well. And maybe she felt refreshed and renewed after resting while she was sick. Maybe the illness is what she needed to slow her down. Can any of you relate to that? Haven't there been times when you've had plans or things to do and you get sick? Then you're forced to cancel your plans and rest. It's annoying. I've heard people say, "I don't have time to be sick. I have too much to do. I don't have time to be sick." And then we might let somebody down if we promise to help them in some way, but we can't because we're sick and we've been forced to rest. But maybe it's a sign to take a break and slow down. Or maybe someone close to us has gotten sick and we need to change our plans to help them. We get irritated with that person because they've gotten sick. How dare they? I have things to do. I remember thinking this when my dad got very sick a couple years ago. He lived 2 hours away, and I had to change a lot of plans and miss a lot of work. And it was very inconvenient. But I started realizing that I could look at it a different way, and I began realizing that it wasn't inconvenient, it was a gift. I now had the opportunity to focus on my dad and to spend time taking care of him that I had not done for years. I was blessed to have that opportunity. And the other things I was supposed to do that I thought were so important, they got done eventually, or maybe not by me, but by somebody else. But they weren't as important as I thought they were. They weren't as important as taking care of Dad. I've learned to look at snow days this way. Now, I know we're getting really irritated about the snow, and we get these little piddly things, and I used to get real annoyed when snow would come and change my plans. And now, if you told me there was a blizzard coming tomorrow, I'd say, yes, a day off from work. An unexpected day off. A break from work and meetings and a chance to stay home. Now, I don't know how many of you would look at the blizzard that way, but I would. I love snow days. A snow day can also be God's way of getting our attention, to remember Him and the wonders He performs around us. There's a time during Job's life when he has been brought down and is suffering so much. One of his friends, or challengers, as my study Bible said, Elihu, is defending God. And in chapter 37, verses 2 to 7, he says, listen to the roar of his voice, to the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He unleashes high lightning beneath the whole heaven and sends it to the ends of the earth. After that comes the sound of his roar. He thunders with his majestic voice. When his voice resounds, he holds nothing back. God's voice thunders in marvelous ways. He does great things beyond our understanding. He says to the snow, fall on the earth, and to the rain shower, be a mighty downpour, so that all men He has made may know His work. He stops every man from his labor. He stops every man from his labor. We all need these times when we must stop our labor, stop our worrying and our planning, and focus. These times when we slow down and rest and focus on God are important. Not only do they help us focus on what is truly important, they also will help us to be refreshed and renewed so that we can become more aware of others around us and how we might be able to help them. I know myself that when I'm tired, when I don't take the time to rest, to pray, to read the Bible, I am in no shape to help myself or anyone else. And I don't want to help anyone else. I tell myself I don't have the time, I need to take care of this or that, and then I will help this person. But if I continue to work too hard, that person gets overlooked, and I never find the time. Jesus knew how important it was to be alone, to talk to his Father, to teach his disciples. He recognized his need for rest. Yes, there were many people who needed him, but he would not be able to help anyone if he was exhausted. If he didn't take the time to be with God in prayer and to listen to God's voice. We need to recognize this need in ourselves also, and to put our trust in God to give us strength when we are tired. The reading from Isaiah today, beginning at verse 28, said, "Have you not known, have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youth will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall not run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." So let's start to recognize our own need for rest and renewal, and thank God for the ways in which he slows us down, the ways he tries to get our attention. Maybe it will be from a snow day that changes our plans, or an illness that keeps us at home and by ourselves, or from an illness of a friend or loved one. Or maybe it will be as simple as a traffic jam that we're stuck in tomorrow. And instead of complaining and cursing and wondering how we're going to get out of this, maybe that's a time when we can say prayers for others. God may be using these times to get our attention. Will we be paying attention? Amen. As we move to our prayer time, there are a lot of people named on our prayer list today.